Everyone. Today I am just kind of playing and thought I might share with you just my style of painting. I think we all see a lot of the same flowers and things like that, but we all give it our twist. So I just find naturally for me, I really like painting wet in wet, and that's just kind of my style. I use two techniques. I use wet in wet and then go back in and add layers of darker colors. If you've seen my peony video where I went 3 days, I don't have it in front of me here, but that was a version of that where you just keep going in and adding darker layers. And then I also love this push and pull technique. I'm sure obviously didn't coin that technique, but it's what I've referred to it for decades now, and that's my other really fun technique that I love to paint. So right now I was just going to kind of play with this wet in wet technique. I'm using this fun big 16 round Princeton Heritage brush. I really like the feel of it and kind of enjoying that. And then this is an Artisto, the larger size pad. I've been sharing the little journals, which I love, but I'm out of. So I'm just going to kind of play here with that wet and wet style. I think it's really important to find what you tend to keep painting, what style, and that's going to be your style. For me, it's wet and wet, and that push and pull is basically what I use. So I want to go into, I'm using my MeiLang palettes or paints today just because they're very reasonable, and I paint a lot now, and I couldn't afford to paint with Winsor Newton every day, so I've chosen the MeiLang palette, which I really love their paints. This is my green go-to. It's like a tree green. It would be a sap green in Winsor Newton. And I'm going to start out with just a little stem here. I love this brush, by the way, because it has a really thin tip on it, but it holds a lot of water. I have never in the past painted with this big of a brush, but I'm really enjoying it. Okay, so you know what? I'm actually going to paint my flower first. Let's do that first. So let me go in. I want to use this in the MeiLang palette, Rose Madder. In your Winsor Newton palette, it could be Quin Magenta, which is a favorite of mine, or maybe some Opera Rose. And I want to grab a light color because it's always easier for me to paint from light to dark. So that's just what I naturally do. And I'm making this quite watered down. I'm just tapping my brush on the side to get rid of some of that paint. Got a little spill here. We'll just dab that up. And let's go ahead and go in and I'm going to paint this fun little flower. Okay, so I'm going to start here. And again, this is just what comes natural for me to paint a flower. So, find what brush strokes work for you, what brush sizes work for you. So I'm going to start with these kind of the front petals here, like that. And then I'm going to start kind of going around to create some of those outer petals kind of in this ball shape. So I'm using the tip of my brush, light pressure, and then I just kind of do a little circle here. And I'm working very wet in wet, which again is kind of my thing. I like working wet in wet. It's just fun for me. And then I'm just going to start adding more of those. So I'm going in and using the side of my brush there to get that round, something like that. And then going up here. Might grab a little bit of water. I like really kind of fluffy flowers. So as you see here, I'm just drawing a series of using the point of my brush and coming out and doing these little ovals. And I did make my petals in front, a little bit darker so they kind of pull forward. And then I'm just grabbing some more of that paint and kind of touching in. You got to do this kind of quick while it's wet and let it kind of spread in there like that. I think that's really pretty. I think the color of choice for everybody is always adding red to this. And I'm just doing these sweeping marks like this. I'm going to wet my brush and clean off some of that paint. And then I'm going to go into, just with clear water, and pull out some petals down below. Something like that. Now again, you know, play with this and find like kind of your go-to. I do a lot of swoops like that too. That's just my style. It's what I'm going to do naturally. It's what I've picked up over the years, and I notice I just do. So go with what kind of has stuck for you. I use a lot of this pink and yellow, just my thing. So there you go. I'm going to wash and rinse my brush, and let's just go in with some of that green. And whoo, that almost dripped. I saw it. And let's just kind of go down like that. So there you go. Now I might go in. Hopefully you don't hear my gardener again. This seems to be a common theme. Every time I go to paint, he shows up. So crazy. Do another one here. There you go. And again, I just tend to use the side of my brush to do kind of squiggles and things like that. You'll find you just have your own style. So there you go. The second flower I'm going to do is a technique I use all the time, and it's that push and pull technique. So what I might do is let's just draw some flower petals on here. See if I can find a pencil. 1 second. Excuse my arm. Okay. So we're just going to draw some petals here. Let's draw our center. Typically what I find is 5 petals. And then I can go in here as well, and I also work very washy. I like blooms and things, so that, again, that's just my style. That's what is stuck for me. And then let's go in here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in the center. So let me grab some of this purple. Actually, I think I want to use, yeah, purple's fine. And I'm going to go in. You've seen me do this a lot. It's just been my go-to over the years. And that's how you want to find your distinct style. What do you like to do? Do you like more detail? Do you like layering? Do you like just going very wet and wet, or wet on dry? And then what I'm going to do is just go in there and feather in, push and pull. Like that. And look, I love that look. That's kind of my thing. Meaning not that I was the brilliant genius artist that thought of that years ago, but it works for me. It's fun for me. So there you go. I also love leaving white space. Love, love, love leaving white space. I think it's really interesting. Let's do this one before it dries too much. And there you go. So that's a technique I like. I might go into the very center, and let's maybe add in a little bit of that rose madder while it's wet. Just gonna flick it out a little bit. I just love, for me, it's very interesting. I like that effect. And there you go. I use this a lot at the edges of my petals too, just pushing and pulling that paint right here because I feel like that's too much paint there. I might go in and just, my brush just has water on it. It's just damp. And I'm just going in and kind of picking some of that up. Like that. And there you go. Now I'll show you just on these other two petals kind of another thing I do that just comes natural for me. It's what I've done all these years. So pay attention to that for you. Like, what is that for you? What do you find? What brush strokes do you just naturally go to? So I'll add in a little bit here. Now I'm kind of trying not to touch here because I don't want it to all blend in. And then I'm going to wash and rinse my brush really well. Clean it off. And I might just pull that paint out. Wash and rinse my brush. Pull it out like that. That was just with damp water. And maybe even a little lifting. Like I said, white space is really fun for me. I like leaving that. That may not be your thing, but I kind of like that. So there you go. Now I'd go in while that's wet and maybe add in a tiny bit of that rose madder again. Something like that. And there you go. I got some little boo-boos here. No big deal. And then let's go into this, the last kind of two petals here. I'm really liking this big brush. I've been painting for so many years. I've never used this big a brush. So this has really been fun for me. I actually really like the way it feels in my hand. It's like a big feel. I've got just water on my brush, a damp brush, and I'm going to go in and just pull that out. And then I actually go back in and lift some of it up. Go in, tap into the bottom just like all of these. So in this one I used that push-pull. I used just pulling the paint out. I used several different things here. Play with all of them and kind of see like what sticks for you. And that's your style. And that's what we want, because then people are going to be like, oh, I know who painted that. I love her style. Whatever that style is for you. Washing and rinsing my brush, and we have one more petal here. I love blooms. I love when my leaves kind of mix in with my flowers. That doesn't bother me at all. That was way too much water on there. See how much came off? So I'm just kind of soaking some of that up with the tip of my brush. Wash and rinse my brush. And now I'm going to go in again, kind of in my mind, just naturally. I'm trying to leave those white spaces again. I just do that. That just kind of comes natural. Touch in. Dry my brush off, and you can always lift and pick up paint if you want. So play with all these things, kind of see what you like, what you have fun with, what you're like, ooh, yeah, that's nice. I like that. And then I might even go in, now once that dries, I'll go in and add in that purple there. And I'm not within my lines here, I know that, but that's okay. I might go in and maybe add little dots on the ends of these petals. So let's pick up I don't know, let's get oops, sorry for that, I just hit my head. Kind of a brownish, I don't know, I just see this color in my palette. And I'm going to pick it up. I was kind of going for a dark brown. And that's what's a little surprising with me about this brush is it's ginormous, or feels ginormous for me compared to my 8. It's can get a really fine tip, and I really like that. So I'm just going to go in and put some little dots here in there. I saw these the other day at the store, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. I never noticed that before. Just playing, always play, always do what kind of just feels natural and identify what is fun for you. Now this leaf is, or petal, is kind of wet, so that one is going to blur and flow a little bit. Something like that, just interesting. Now I'll go in and add that dark purple in the center there. That's okay if it has a little brown on it, it's not going to hurt it. There you go. My flower's a little wonky. That's okay. And in the center, I'll probably add in some little yellow maybe. And then let's do some leaves. Let's see. One thing I'm noticing, which I actually like, is let me grab my paint so my arm's not in your way. I noticed with this larger brush, I seem to want to hold my brush a little farther back. I tend to paint like this, and that's been kind of a fun little thing I've been doing. I don't know where that came from. And then again, if I'm not sure if I have too much water in my brush, and see, look at that, would have been drips. So point press, there we go. Point press, point press. Let's see here. Love the tip on this brush. It can really get some fun, small little lines. Point press. Point press. Just like that. Wash my brush a little bit. Maybe we can create a little bit of yellow in there. So I just pick up some of that cad yellow and go in there. Let it kind of spread around. That's fun. I tend to love little swirls and dashes like that. I put those in a lot. So that's my thing. That might not be yours or everybody's, but you'll figure out what that is. And I love when the colors blend like that. So there you go. Now on this, I could leave it just like that, which is beautiful and fun. But I think what I will do is go in and maybe add some little yellow things there. Yes, I know what they're called, but this is just kind of fun. So again, I'm using the tip of my brush. I've got maybe an 80-20, 80 pigment, 20 water. And I'm just going to add in, just again, having fun. Whenever I add in these little yellow thingamajiggies, I always go in with a little bit of a darker brown, burnt sienna, burnt umber, whichever you want. And while it's wet, I'll just kind of add some, because to me it tends to look a little deeper in. I also feel like when you work in layers like this, which I'm going to show you right now, is something else I tend to do. So this is one layer. Now if I was to go into this again and add in some darker layers, I love doing that. I think it's really pretty. So I'm getting a little darker value. And I might just go in and define some of these. So maybe I don't want to stick my hand in that wet paint. Something like that. That's another thing that I just always seem to do in my paintings for the most part. I'm trying to avoid this over here. And this brush is teaching me to actually really hold back farther on my brush than I ever normally do. And that just to me adds some more depth and interest, so it's kind of, when I add in those darks, it makes it feel to me like there's some shadows going on in here, and to me a little bit more pulling out some of those petals. I can see them a little bit more. You may be just fine with the way it was to begin with. There we go. And there you go. So those are kind of my two techniques, you know, play when you're going through all of these wonderful artists' videos. Like, see what you really like. I would probably go in here, and I think I might use, might as well finish that off, a Payne's Gray type of color. I like Payne's Gray because it isn't quite as black. And just add that into the center, something like that. I'm really a big fan of values, so using darker values, lighter values. In here, I could even go in and put in a darker value leaf. So that's a lot more water than, pigment than water. So it's giving me a darker value. So I might just go in and maybe point press. Something like that. And just again, pulling out some of these leaves. You could do that, or you could leave it like it was. It was perfectly fine the way it was. But I always tend to find myself, I like going in and creating again those values. I think it's really fun. So I think that's perfect, and I would probably stop there. So I hope that was just kind of fun for you. I just happened to think of this today and thought, you know, I do that a lot, and I hope that might be helpful for some of you, because honestly, these techniques for watercolors, I mean, techniques are techniques, right? Wet and wet and so on and so forth. There's kind of just, it is what it is, but you'll find you tend to paint more wet on wet, or more, maybe more washy, like me. And it's important you go with that, and that's going to be your style. I love a lot of white space. I'm constantly using white space. I could even go in here and add some layers if I wanted to. So I might go back into that purple, which is what I used, with a little bit darker value, just meaning a little bit more pigment versus water. And I might go in and just something like that. Now, just for me, I don't like hard edges, so I would probably go in and pick some of that up. Like that. But I love that. I love that layering effect. I might even use some of that pink I've got here in my palette and start adding. This is glazing. This is what I have really enjoyed with watercolors over the years, because even though I put that pink over it, you can still, see that beautiful purple underneath, that undertone of purple. And look at how beautiful that is. Or for me, it's very interesting. I think it's really beautiful. It's what calls to me. I might go in here and add a little bit of that. I lift because I want some more of that white space. I don't want everything to look the same. So I think I'll stop there. Hopefully that gave you just some thoughts, and when playing with your paints, you might be more aware and noticing what your go-to is. For me, it's the layering of paint values and that push and pull. Those are my dominant techniques that you see me use in all my tutorials, and I share all the time. So there you go. I think you guys, if you want to really play like I did, I actually ordered this on accident, and it came and I was like, "Ooh, holy cow, that is one big brush." And I started using it and I was like, "Wow, I think I kind of like that." So I'm keeping it. It's been really fun. And this is at Artisto pads, the bigger pads. And of course, I'm always using all my Meeden palettes. I just love them. They're really cool. They're pretty porcelain palettes that I've really been enjoying. And that's it, guys. Have fun with this. And I'd love to hear what you think your style is, what your go-to styles is. Okay, I will talk to you all soon. Thanks.